Side quests have always been a staple in the Legend of Zelda franchise, taking up a lot of the overall playtime and sometimes being better than parts of the main story itself. The rewards for completing these quests can vary, from little bits of additional story to item upgrades and of course, pieces of heart. Pieces of heart, or heart pieces, are a recurring collectible featured in nearly every single Zelda game. While collecting them is usually a lot of fun, there are some that aren't that great at all. In this video, I will be going through every mainline Zelda game and picking the best and worst heart piece in each. Before we get into the video, I want to clarify a few things first. I know I just said that I'd be choosing from every mainline Zelda game, but that's unfortunately not true, as not every single game features heart pieces or heart containers. The games that were not featured are any multiplayer Zelda games, so the Four Swords games and Triforce Heroes, Breath of the Wild, and Tears of the Kingdom, as their heart containers are all obtained in the exact same way. Some games like the first two Zeldas only feature heart containers, but they're all acquired in a unique enough way for me to pick a clear best and worst. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to subscribe for more Zelda content just like this. It really helps the channel grow and it means a lot to me. And with all those clarifications out of the way, let's find the best and worst heart piece in every Zelda game. As I had just mentioned, the original Legend of Zelda didn't actually feature heart pieces, instead hosting a total of 13 heart containers scattered throughout Hyrule. Most of these hearts are obtained by defeating bosses within the game's dungeons. Though to make things a bit more interesting, I tried my hardest not to pick a dungeon heart container, since they are a bit less interesting and make the list slightly inconsistent, meaning that I have 5 heart containers to choose from. I should also note that I will only be picking from the heart containers within the first quest, instead of including those from the second quest as well, in case you were wondering. Honestly, a lot of the heart containers in this game are obtained by using an item to overcome an obstacle so you can collect your prize, which is just really boring most of the time. Of the 5, my favorite heart container is located in the Northeastern Sea, which requires the player to use the raft to travel across the ocean and enter a cave. I really like the overall location of this heart container. I've always been a big fan of Zelda 1's beach areas for whatever reason, and needing to cross the ocean on your raft makes for a really neat journey. And to completely contradict everything I just said, the worst heart container in Zelda 1 is located just south of level 1. No clue how, but for some reason 4 of the 5 heart containers in this game are located right by the ocean, which, as I've just said, is a great location. Unfortunately, the way of acquiring this heart is nearly impossible without a guide. To find the staircase, the player must burn down one of these trees on the coastline. I have no clue how you're supposed to know which tree to burn. Sure, a lot of this game and its secrets are found by blowing up random walls, but at least the others have some sort of hint. There is literally just a straight line of trees with no indication whatsoever on which contains the staircase. You also need the candle for this heart container, which is a pretty difficult item to acquire. Overall, a really weak selection of heart containers, but it makes sense as it was the first ever Zelda game. Unfortunately for us, Zelda 2 has an even worse selection than its predecessor. Believe it or not, but Zelda 2 actually features an even smaller selection of heart containers, cutting the total from 5 to just 4. This makes my selections for the best and worst even harder, as honestly, none of them are all that great. The heart container that always stood out to me as the best was the one located just south of the Parappa Palace. To reach this heart container, you must travel alongside the east coast of the main island, doing some platforming and even a bit of combat during your trek. Actually getting to this heart container can be a fun challenge, especially if you're doing it at the very start of the game. I also really like the grove of trees surrounding the heart, which makes it seem just a bit more special. My pick for the worst from the same game would have to belong to the heart found east of 3-Eye Rock. My biggest issue with this heart container is how it's located in a random square on the map, with no visual indication or difference from the others, which, as I just mentioned, was a huge pro for my favorite heart container. Sure, you could count actually getting to and traversing through the island as the challenge for this heart, but it just doesn't feel specific enough to me. And when you actually find the heart, it's literally just sitting there for you to grab, which is like super lame. While the first 2 Zelda games don't have many interesting heart containers to choose from, the next installment definitely picked things up for the better. A Link to the Past was the first ever Zelda game to feature actual heart pieces, instead of featuring just a handful of heart containers. A Link to the Past contains a total of 24 heart pieces scattered throughout Hyrule and the Dark World. You'd think picking the best and worst from this huge selection would be easy, right? Unfortunately, it really wasn't. Most of the heart pieces in this game are just good. None stand out enough for me to call it the obvious best one, and the same goes for the worst. Of the 24 heart pieces, my favorite is the one located near Turtle Rock. Again, this game didn't really have a clear best heart piece in the mix, but this one definitely stands out more than the others. To find this heart, you must use the magic mirror in a certain spot outside of Turtle Rock to return to Hyrule. You can then take out a few Goria and make your way to the heart piece. Despite Turtle Rock not being a very fun dungeon, this heart piece is a definite highlight. I love how tricky finding this heart piece can be. It's not in an obvious spot at all, but it's something a lot of players will find if their memory is good enough. It's also technically the final heart piece in the game, which makes it that much more special to collect. For the worst, there were a few heart pieces that I had in mind. There are a lot of freebie heart pieces in this game, meaning that they're kinda just hanging around in the open. But I don't think those ones are necessarily all that bad, just really boring. The Village of Outcast chess game can be a pain if you don't get lucky the first few times, as the entire minigame is basically just luck. While that heart piece might be bad, I still prefer it over the digging game heart piece. Just like the chess game, this is yet another heart piece that is heavily reliant on luck. Every time you want to play this game, you must pay 80 rupees, which can really add up if you don't get lucky. Link is given 30 seconds to run around the playing field, using his shovel to dig until he finds the heart piece. That's it. You just dig over and over and over again. The sheer amount of luck required for this heart piece is why it's my least favorite, which I'm sure is also the same reason why other people actually enjoy it, if they can get lucky enough. The playing fee being 80 rupees is really steep compared to the chess game, which is just 30 rupees per attempt. There's another heart piece that is almost identical to this one found in a later game, but in the meantime, let's cover the first ever handheld Zelda game. Out of every game we've covered up to this point, Link's Awakening has by far the most interesting selection of heart pieces. This is all thanks to the game's great roster of minigames. While A Link to the Past definitely had some fun minigames, the few in Link's Awakening are far better. Whether it's the fishing game, crane game, or my personal favorite of the bunch, the Rapids race. There are 2 heart pieces rewarded for taking on this race. One is found on an island during the race, and the other is the prize if you can reach the bottom quick enough. Though honestly, both are super fun to get, and either of them could be my pick for this game. While the Rapids race is still quite fun on the Game Boy version, the Switch port does this minigame much better. I've always been a big fan of the uses for both the hookshot and the Roc's Feather during this minigame. They add up for a really fun time that forces you to make quick decisions. This has always been my favorite heart piece or pieces in this game, though most of them are really quite good. Even the heart pieces out in the open are made quite interesting. Fortunately for me, picking the worst is just as easy as picking the best. For some reason, Nintendo loves adding heart pieces that can be purchased from certain shops in most games. These heart pieces are usually really boring and kinda lazy, since you literally just buy it from the shop and boom, one step closer to a new heart. Of course, the worst heart piece in Link's Awakening is the shop heart piece, which can be purchased at Mabe Village for 200 rupees. Again, just really lame. This heart piece is really dependent on what your current rupee situation is looking like. You can either get it right away or have to grind quite a while to gain enough money, which is something I'm not a fan of at all. Despite Link's Awakening featuring by far the best heart piece selection of the 4 Zelda games, it's still not as great as the future games in the franchise. Ocarina of Time was the franchise's introduction to 3D. This shift was revolutionary for the series and brought upon many changes. Of these changes, the most important by far is the gameplay, being much more interactive and different in their new third dimension. This upgrade greatly improved the quality of each heart piece. Despite Ocarina of Time having a large selection of them, I don't think a single one of the heart pieces is completely boring. Each and every one have at least something interesting to bring to the table. Unfortunately, being interesting doesn't automatically make it good. I was absolutely torn between 2 heart pieces when selecting this game's worst. So torn that I just decided to pick both as the worst, since each of them have their own irritating qualities. The first and arguably the most notoriously bad is the luck-based Dampe heart piece. If Link is to visit the Kakariko graveyard during the correct hour, he can pay Dampe 10 rupees to dig up the dirt under his feet. As I just mentioned, this heart piece is really dependent on luck, which is always hit or miss depending on how long it takes. While I definitely don't love this heart piece, I don't personally find it as annoying as the Lost Woods Ocarina game. This heart piece is acquired after playing an Ocarina game with 2 Skull Kids. Basically, you gotta copy the notes that the Skull Kids will play on their flute, which sounds easy enough, but it can be really irritating as the notes don't stay on your screen. This whole minigame also drags on for way too long, as you must play each note every time a new one is added. This heart piece is a lot more skill focused compared to Dampe, pay, which I think is why it's slightly more frustrating to me. My pick for the best in this game belongs to the Bombchu Bowling Alley. I've always been a huge fan of this minigame. It's super fun and a perfect mix of challenge without making it too frustrating. There were a few other options for this game as best, but the Bombchu Bowling Alley has always been super memorable to me, and a game I look forward to playing every playthrough. I honestly don't have any issues with this heart piece at all. Well, besides those stupid chickens. Ocarina of Time did a great job at giving us some interesting heart pieces and side content in this new 3D style. Majora's Mask is home to the single best heart piece in the entire franchise. Everything about this heart piece is perfect. It has a great build-up, fun execution, and of course, is the only time we get to watch Link bust a move. The Rosa Sister heart piece is one of the best things to ever happen in the Zelda franchise. Watching Link show off his new dance moves is truly a treat. While this heart piece is basically just pressing a button, it actually has some pretty interesting build-up. Before you can acquire this heart piece, you must play the Song of Healing to Camaro and collect his mask. His new dancing ability helps the Rosa sisters with their own dance skills, rewarding Link with a heart piece. Yes, choosing this heart piece is kinda a joke pick, but also kinda not really. I love this silliness of this heart piece so much, even if it's not remotely fitting to the dark vibes of Majora's Mask. Surprisingly, Majora's Mask has a lot of not so great heart pieces to choose from, though my choice for this game has always been clear. The Postman Timer Challenge has always been my personal least favorite from this game. Entering the post office at a certain time on the first or second day will allow the player to test their counting skills. To beat the minigame, you must stop the timer at exactly 10 seconds, which sounds easy enough. The catch is that the timer actually disappears, unless you wear the bunny hood, making the challenge a whole lot harder. I could totally understand if many of you actually enjoy this game. With the bunny hood, it can actually be a fun challenge, but I've personally never been a fan of this heart piece, making it the worst in Majora's Mask. Oracle of Seasons, actually both Oracle games for that matter, feature the lamest selection of heart pieces in the entire franchise. There are like maybe 4 interesting heart pieces in the 2 games, which does not make my job here any easier. The best and most interesting in Oracle of Seasons is the reward after defeating the Moblin King in the Moblin Keep. The very obvious highlight for this piece of heart is the fact that you have to fight a boss to obtain it. The Moblin King is a pretty fun boss fight, and hunting down this heart can be a fun little journey. My choices for the worst heart piece in Oracle of Seasons were plentiful, but the worst of the bunch is a pretty obvious choice. There's a shrub located near Horon Village. If you burn it with an ember seed, it will clear your path, allowing you to collect the piece of heart. Yep. That's it. I don't think I need to go into any more detail on why this heart piece is really boring. It's extremely obvious and has literally nothing interesting about it at all, which does make sense as it's likely the first heart piece you'll collect during your playthrough. Still, pretty easily the worst in this very underwhelming selection. And on the topic of Oracle games, Oracle of Ages has an even lamer selection of hearts to choose from. I actually don't think there is a single interesting heart piece throughout the entirety of this game. Before we get to my favorite of the bunch, let's talk about the worst. The heart piece located at the bottom of the Black Tower is almost identical to the worst from Oracle of Seasons. The only difference is that it instead requires the shovel instead of ember seeds. Again, not much else to talk about here, so let's cover the best. As I just mentioned, there really isn't a single interesting heart piece in the entire game. The most interesting of this big group being beneath the water near Crescent Island. I really tried to find something more interesting than this one, but unfortunately this roster is just awful. Diving underwater and making your way through this maze is kinda cool, but nothing too interesting. I was hoping to talk about something a bit more entertaining for these 2 games, but unfortunately the Oracle games combine for an extremely boring roster to select from. My pick for the best heart piece in Wind Waker is thankfully a pretty easy one. Overall, Wind Waker features a really solid roster of heart pieces to pick from. Lots of them involve sailing through the Great Sea in search of new islands. During your time on the sea, the player will likely encounter lots of submarines. If you enter them and defeat all the enemies, a prize will be revealed. Some of these prizes can even be heart pieces. There are a few enemy gauntlet heart pieces in Wind Waker, and any of them could be my favorite. Of the bunch, the one located at Star Island is the most challenging and my personal favorite. Wind Waker has some really fun combat, which is the main reason why I enjoy collecting these heart pieces so much. While Wind Waker certainly features a solid roster of heart pieces, the enemy combat ones have always been my personal favorite. Luckily, finding the worst is just as easy. The worst heart piece in Wind Waker by a freaking mile is obviously the one found in the Forsaken Fortress. I mean, come on, this one is basically a no-brainer. The obvious flaw with this heart piece is that it's found in the worst Zelda location ever. I'm totally joking, the worst is the Orca minigame. I've always had a huge issue with minigames that make you repeat the same thing over and over again for a long period of time, and that is exactly what this minigame is. To acquire this heart piece, you must hit Orca 500 times with your sword while avoiding his attacks, as getting hit enough times will end the game and require you to start all over again. I am not a fan of how long this heart piece can take to get, and I really don't like how it can take even longer if you're not good at the minigame, like myself. I also could have picked any of the salvaging heart pieces throughout the sea, as they're just kinda there. But I don't dislike any of those like I do the Orca one. And yes, this could be a skill issue. Minish Cap features arguably the most notorious heart piece in the entire franchise, and that's not a good thing. This heart piece is debatably my least favorite in the entire franchise. It is time consuming, repetitive, luck dependent, and just flat out awful. I know a lot of you will agree with me when I say the figurine collection heart piece is by far the worst in the entire game, and again, it's not even remotely close. As I just mentioned, this heart piece is notorious for being awful. Actually, out of every heart piece on this list, this is the only one I haven't actually obtained. To get this heart piece, you must play the figurine game. The figurine game is a luck-based minigame where you can collect figurines of various people or things around Hyrule in exchange for your shells. Which figurine you get is completely luck dependent. You can also exchange more shells for a better chance of getting a new figure. You might be thinking, this doesn't sound that bad. Sure, it seems annoying, but not the worst thing ever. But there's a catch. If you want the heart piece, you must collect 130 f***ing figurines. This means that you must use the figurine dispensing machine a minimum of 130 times. And I put a lot of emphasis on minimum because again, this game is completely luck based as you can get a ton of duplicates. Having to go through this menu every single time is unbelievably tedious. So tedious that I literally could not finish it. I know this is the obvious choice for this game, but it's easily the correct one. Honestly, Minish Cap has one of the most disappointing selection of heart pieces in the entire franchise. I was expecting there to be a few decent ones, but they're honestly all quite lame. The most interesting of the bunch was the Lake Hylia beanstalk. Yeah, I know. I told you this roster wasn't great. Fusing a kinstone with a certain Minish will cause a beanstalk to rise at Lake Hylia. I really like how interesting it is to actually get to this beanstalk, requiring Link to dig through a cave to find the exit. I've also always been a huge fan of the animation that plays when climbing up the beanstalks. I've always mentioned how I love Minish Cap's art style, and the beanstalks are one of the highlights of these beautiful visuals. Definitely a lame heart piece when you're comparing it to the other game's best, but it is the strongest in the underwhelming roster of the Minish Cap. Twilight Princess features arguably the best heart pieces in the entire franchise. Nearly every single one of them is really fun to collect. In Twilight Princess, there are a lot of fun minigames to play, like the Karga Rock minigame, Falby's Flight by Foul, or the Fishing Hole, which is actually bearable this time around. Though my favorite of the bunch is easily the snowboard race atop the mountain of Snow Peak. After completing the Snow Peak ruins, Link can choose to race against Yetta and Yetto. First, you race against Yetto, which is quite easy, but if you want the heart piece, you'll have to race against Yetta. This race is actually pretty challenging, but at the same time very fun. Sliding down the mountain on a chunk of ice feels exactly like you're playing City Escape from Sonic Adventure 2. This minigame is so enjoyable to play through, and I really appreciate how you have to attempt it multiple times before you can get the real prize. The worst heart piece in Twilight Princess is another rupee related one. In Castletown, you can find an old man named Charlo. If you give him 1,000 rupees, he'll reward you with a heart piece. Yeah, that's literally it. This heart piece is exactly like the shop one from Link's Awakening. It just feels so lazy compared to the others in this game. Like I said before, these money related heart pieces can either be really quick, if you have the cash, or super grindy, which is really repetitive and boring. I will never be a fan of this genre of heart piece. Despite Twilight Princess's solid group of selections, the Charlo donation heart piece is quite easily the worst in the entire game. A while back, I had mentioned how Zelda 1 and 2 don't actually feature heart pieces, instead having a few complete heart containers. For some reason, the DS games follow this exact same idea, so we'll have to talk about heart containers instead of heart pieces, but in this game, they're basically the exact same thing. One thing I had said a while back when I was talking about Zelda 1 was how I didn't want to pick an end of the boss fight or dungeon heart container, as it makes the list slightly inconsistent. Well, I tried my hardest. Both DS games feature a really sneaky good roster of dungeon bosses, and Phantom Hourglass has a slightly lame roster of heart containers, so I just decided to pick the heart container rewarded after defeating my personal favorite boss, even if I just said I didn't want to do that. Anyway, my favorite boss fight in this game is the battle against Eox. This boss makes really clever use of the hammer, making Link launch himself into the air to smash away at Eox and his stone body. I won't go super deep into why I like this boss since that's a video for another day, but Eox is a super fun boss and is also my favorite heart container at the same time. Phantom Hourglass features arguably my least favorite minigame in the entire franchise, that being the shooting range. The shooting range is a perfect display of the DS game's irritating jank. Everything about this minigame feels so awkward, whether it be the touch controls or needing to watch both screens at the exact same time. Achieving a score of over 2,000 points will reward Link with a heart container. I really dislike this minigame for a lot of reasons, making it easily my least favorite heart container in Phantom Hourglass. Is it a hot take to say that I actually enjoyed the Whittleton Whip Race? I feel like I don't see nearly enough people talking about just how fun this minigame is. The Whip Race is a near perfect combination of both fun and challenge. Oh, and of course that means the Whittleton Whip Race is my favorite heart container in Spirit Tracks. If you want the best prize, which is the heart container, you must reach the end of the race with less than 1 minute and 15 seconds remaining. Spirit Tracks was the most recent Zelda game that I had played, and I remember having such a tough time with this heart piece. You need to have a really solid run with little to no errors in order to achieve the right time, but at the same time I enjoyed every attempt. Timing your screen taps at the right time was pretty tricky, but eventually you'll get the hang of it. Definitely an underrated minigame and my favorite heart piece in Spirit Tracks. A while back I had mentioned how I hate the rupee related heart pieces. Well, we finally reached the ultimate rupee spending heart container. If Link spends a total of 5,000, yes, 5 freaking 1,000 rupees at Beetle's shop, he will become a gold member. As a result, Beetle will gift Link a heart container for blowing so much money at his useless shop. I'm sure you already know why I dislike this heart piece so much, but I'll explain it anyway. I'm not sure if this is just me, but I hardly find myself ever buying items from shops during my playthroughs of any Zelda game. Sure, I spend a few rupees here and there, but I assure you it is not even remotely close to being 5,000. The amount of rupees required to obtain this heart piece is genuinely insane. I know I've said this a few times already, but these heart containers require so much grinding that it completely kills any sort of fun, unless you're into that, which is weird. You gotta get checked out for that. I'm sure you get the point now, so let's move on to a slightly better group of heart pieces. Skyward Sword has a lot of minigames, and the overall quality is pretty mixed. Both my favorite and least favorite heart pieces in Skyward Sword will be rewards from said minigames. But which games are they? I don't exactly remember Fun Island being all that fun, but I still had a decent time with it, even if it was quite challenging to land on that final sliver of the wheel. The Thunder Dragon Trial is an exciting challenge against the game's many bosses, but of course, that means we have to fight that thing. Freaking ugly boss. My favorite minigame in Skyward Sword was always the Rickety Coaster minigame in the Lanayru shipyard. This minigame requires the player to tilt their controller in the right direction to build up speed around corners. To get this heart piece, you must complete the track on Expert in under 65 seconds. This is another one of those minigames that can be pretty challenging, but also quite fun to try and do it right. As I've mentioned like a million times on my channel, I really like Skyward Sword's motion controls, and this minigame is a really great use of this new style of control. The worst in this game, well, besides the super creepy heart piece where Link has to infiltrate Zelda's room by dropping through the chimney and going through her personal belongings to find the heart piece, which is actually super creepy. Anyway, the worst heart piece in this game is that stupid pumpkin pull minigame. This is yet another minigame that makes use of the motion controls, only this time, it's not fun in the slightest. In this minigame, Link must shoot pumpkins being thrown in the air with his bow. Scoring 600 points in this game will reward Link with the heart piece, which sounds easy enough if you never miss a shot. The only problem is, It's really easy to miss. Each pumpkin hit will grant you 10 points, and going on a streak will give you more and more points, capping at 50 points a hit. Going on a streak is literally essential to beating this minigame, which is really easier said than done. And yes, I know you can totally cheese it by just shooting the pumpkins right as they leave Fledge's hands, but that's no fun. Actually, you know what? F that. This minigame sucks. I'm gonna cheese it anyway. If you watched my worst part in every Zelda game video, my least favorite heart piece in A Link Between Worlds should come as no surprise at all. The baseball minigame, actually called the Octoball Derby, is a part of this game that I've never been fond of. Now, I'll admit, I was a bit harsh on this minigame in the past, labeling it as the worst part in the entire game, which I guess just goes to show how amazing this game is, but back on topic, I'm fully aware that my disliking for this minigame is a skill issue. I've always had a tough time with aiming where the ball was gonna go, and most of the time I just got lucky when it hit a gold pot. If you want the heart piece, you'll need to achieve a score of 100 points or higher, which can actually be pretty tricky. If you know what you're doing, this minigame can be a blast, but if you don't, like myself, it can be an awful experience. The overall heart piece roster in A Link Between Worlds is really solid, with most heart pieces just being mediocre to good, but one heart piece I think is great is the one given to Link after conquering the treacherous tower. Well, I guess not really conquering since it's only the intermediate level. The Treacherous Tower is A Link Between Worlds take on the enemy gauntlet. It works very similarly to the likes of the Savage Labyrinth and the Cave of Ordeals. I had mentioned how much I enjoyed Wind Waker's enemy gauntlets, and those same feelings can be shared for this game. The intermediate level consists of 15 floors, all filled with different enemies to defeat. The fun and unique items of A Link Between Worlds also greatly add to the enjoyment of this heart piece. Clearing this level can actually be pretty challenging if the player isn't properly equipped. While A Link Between Worlds is still notoriously one of the easiest Zelda games, the Treacherous Tower provides a fun challenge for the player to overcome, making it my personal favorite heart piece in the game. We finally reached the latest game in the Zelda franchise. Echoes of Wisdom is another game with a very underwhelming and boring selection of heart pieces to choose from. Most of the heart pieces in this game are the ones that are just kinda out in the open, requiring the player to use their echoes to reach the heart piece. Let's cover the worst before the best since I don't really have that much to say about it. The worst is located to the very far left or west of the Elden Volcano. It's just sitting out in the open and can be obtained by either dropping down or building up to the ledge it sits on. Honestly, just such a boring and obvious heart piece, and in my opinion, the worst in the game. Luckily, Echoes of Wisdom features a few interesting heart pieces throughout the game, my favorites being obtained after defeating an overworld boss. There are many heart pieces like this, but my favorite is either between Bori of the wrecked ship or Smog in the Eastern Temple. I really liked exploring the wrecked ship, and Bori was a great way to conclude the side quest, but of the two, I think I slightly prefer Smog. Smog is a recurring Zelda enemy, originally from Oracle of Ages, and both fights are basically the exact same thing. Zelda can use various echoes to try and bring all of Smog's parts together. This fight requires a lot of thinking and fits really well with Echoes of Wisdom's more puzzle-focused gameplay. Smog is also located in the Eastern Temple, which is obviously a reference to the iconic Eastern Palace from both A Link to the Past and A Link Between Worlds. While Smog might be my favorite of the bunch, this spot could have gone to any of the overworld bosses in the game, as they're all fun in their own way, making them pretty easily my favorite heart pieces in Echoes of Wisdom. Thank you all so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun making this video, so if you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed making it, consider subscribing to the channel to show your support. It means a lot to see so many of you enjoying the content. When you subscribe, be sure to turn on post notifications so you never miss an upload or stream. Again, thank you all so much for the continued support on this channel. It means a lot to see so much love toward the videos. I hope you could agree with most of my picks. I'm sure we had some disagreements, so if your favorite or least favorite heart piece wasn't in the video, be sure to leave a comment below saying what your favorite and least favorite Zelda heart pieces are. Thanks again for everything. You guys are the best. I'll see you all in the next one.